A column last week by a so-called conservative named Tasha Kiridan in iPolitics. Yes, it is an actual publication, and it doesn't just line the bottoms of bird cages because it's mostly online. Well, it claimed that if the conservatives want to get ahead, they need to ditch the social conservatives, the religious right. Well, there's a rebuttal to that piece now by a man who knows the inside and the outside of the Conservative Party. Ian Brodie was Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Stephen Harper from 2006 until 2008. He's worked in Conservative circles for years. Ian, welcome to the program. You are now Professor at the University of Calgary, correct?
That's right, Brian. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. I won't go through your very long and extensive resume, but suffice to say, you know the Conservative movement very well. And I read that piece by Tasha Kiridan and I thought, when was the last time she was at a conservative event? Look, I'm a fiscal and social conservative. I'm unashamedly so. But the social conservative wing of the party has very little power. And, well, that's the way it's always been, isn't it?
Well, I mean, her column was about religious people in the party. And, I don't think less than a month after a losing election campaign is a good time to start deciding who we don't want in the party. It's time to think about who we might have lost over the course of the past 4 years, and about getting them back. There's lots of people with lots of religious faith in the Conservative Party. That's part of the strength of the operation. She was making the claim that religious ideas had driven a big chunk of the Harper government's agenda in office, and I'm just not sure that I saw too much of the evidence for that.
Well, I didn't see it either. One of the pieces that you rebut is the idea that the maternal and child health care plan, the Millennium Development Goals that Prime Minister Harper championed while he was chair of the G8 and the G20, that somehow this was religiously driven because he said, let's help women survive childbirth and let's help children live to the age of 5. This was the goal. And all of a sudden, abortion advocates came out and said, yeah, we can help you with that, fund abortion. And he went, well, wait a minute. I said I want to help kids live to the age of 5 and help mothers survive childbirth. She saw his rejection of that proposal as some kind of, tilt to the religious right.
Look, I mean, the child and maternal health target, as you said, set by the United Nations. So that's hardly a religious church organization. It was accepted by countries around the world. The hardest of the Millennium Development Goals to achieve has been the maternal and child health one, and so the Harper government put its weight behind trying to make some progress on that. Other people then tried to make this about abortion, and I think the Prime Minister was right to sidestep that. The focus, as you say, is on trying to make sure that kids make it through their first year or their first 5 years, and then in parts of the world where many women die in childbirth for preventable reasons, that we stop that. I wasn't sure that keeping a focused agenda was a particularly religious agenda at work.
No, I wouldn't say so either. I mean, the fact of the matter is that on the issue of abortion, the Prime Minister, whatever his views, and he's been cagey on that, I have a certain inkling of what they might be. I'm sure you have an even better inkling of what they might be. But he has not wanted that debate to be had in public.
No, and so this is the part that I thought was missing from the article, was the effort that he's had to make sure that abortion didn't become a federal political issue while he was Prime Minister. And even, I thought, a relatively mild private member's resolution to have an investigation into when life begins. He tried to put down a party whip to stop even that resolution from passing.
That's even something that Bertha Wilson on the Supreme Court in the Morgentaler decision said, if science develops to the point where we know more, then Parliament, welcome to revisit it. But that was shut down.
I think religious conservatives and social conservatives have found other reasons to be at home in the Conservative Party over the years. Certainly, Justin Trudeau's dictum that no one can be pro-life and be in the Liberal caucus with him, I think speaks volumes about the choices that are available. But I didn't see a grand conspiracy in the Conservative agenda to try to recruit religious voters.
This has been an ongoing theme from the left. I don't know if you know Tasha, if you're friends with her. I know her, having met her a couple of times, sort of thing. In my view, she's moved more towards the Toronto elite mentality the longer she's been down there. And So I was surprised to see, though, because she used to be fairly conservative. She used to, pen articles that a lot of conservatives would champion, and now she seems to be on that Toronto elite mentality. And that's the mentality that for years has been trying to say Stephen Harper is a fundamentalist Christian. And I remember early in his tenure, Marcy McDonald's book, Armageddon Time, came out. They tried to paint the entire government. I think you were still chief of staff at this time. Tried to paint the entire government as in the hands of dominionists and old-time revivalist fundamentalists, and you're just waiting for the end times for everyone to go to heaven together or something.
Well, look, I mean, I haven't read Marcy's book. I read the magazine version, short article version of it, and decided to take a pass on the whole book.
Well, good for you. I had to review it, so.
Tash is a smart woman. She's been active in conservative circles for quite some time. I guess what I worried about in the article was we're going to have this discussion again, as we did in 2003 when the Conservative Party was being stood up. How big an operation do we want to have? How many different types of conservatives do we want to have in the same party? And look, I was around for the growth and the success of the growth. We grew by adding to the party, not by subtracting to the party. And I think that was one of Harper's signature strengths as leader of the party, is that he found room for a very broad range of people inside the party. Obviously, the Prime Minister is retiring now, stepping down from the leadership, and there's going to be a leadership race. I would not like to see a leadership race where people campaigned on who they could push out of the party or who they could exclude from the party. We came, 5 or 6 points short in the election campaign of coming ahead of Trudeau and Trudeau's Liberals. They're going to have 4 years now to run the country as they want, and we'll see over the course of 4 years what they make of that opportunity. I think our challenge over the 4 years is to grow back that 5, 6, 7% of the party that we somehow have lost over the course of the last 4 years. And I think the reason why I wrote the rebuttal to Tasha was not to have anything against Tasha personally, but this idea that we should first start building out the party by throwing people overboard. I think that's just the wrong path to start down as we begin this thing.
Okay, so no one should take my animosity to what she wrote as your animosity.
No, I mean, look. Tasha's a mother. She has a working mom with a complicated family situation, like all of us have complicated family situations. Mm-hmm. I want Tasha Kiernan in that party too.
Okay, let me ask you about this. Moving away from her stance on where the party should be, right after the election, I started to hear all the calls for, well, the party needs to move to the center, the party needs to move to the left, the party needs to be progressive conservative. Progressive conservative to me is a bit like saying, I'm a push-me, pull-me party. Progressivism and conservatism are competing ideologies in my view. But I said in a piece just after the election, Stephen Harper didn't lose because he was too far right. He was a centrist, pragmatist type of conservative. He ran a sensible government, but after 9 years, things happen, right? My view is that Justin Trudeau won, not by abridging his views, not by saying, well, I'll go halfway on what my party wants. He staked a claim and said, here's where I stand. Come with me or stand against me, but this is where I am. And I think that's what conservatives need to do. Not, the incrementalism of Stephen Harper was fine, and we can have more leaders that are incrementalism, but I think as a movement, you can't shy away from your principles and try and win power. I don't think that works. Your thoughts on that?
Well, look, Brian, let's put the bigger historical context here, because I think you're basically on the right path here. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when the Conservative Party was being started up and when Harper became the leader, there was lots of advice from people who said you have to be for low taxes, balanced budgets, but you have to be socially progressive. Why? Because people thought you couldn't really have a conservative party, a genuinely conservative party in Canada that could also win power at the federal level. Mm. And if Harper proved one thing, he proved that whole theory is wrong. That if you start with a conservative base, of course, a conservative base, if it's 28 or 30% of the electorate, and remember, 12 years ago, people thought this was maybe 10 or 12% of the electorate. We now know it's about 32% of the electorate. If you start with that, you're very close to winning an election. You've got to go past that, of course. You've got to eat further into the middle of the political spectrum, however you want to see that. You have to make common cause with some other people. But on the whole, if you don't start with that, look, even in this past election campaign, difficult campaign, 10 years of government, not a very smoothly running campaign. Some parts of it weren't well thought through. We won 30% of the electorate in that.
Well, 32%, and Trudeau's landslide wasn't even as big as what Harper won in 2011.
Didn't get to 40%. So let's be careful about saying, look, to build a conservative party from the center of the political spectrum to the right, we know from history, from lots of historic examples, that's a failing strategy. Just as an overarching strategy, that's a failing strategy. The strategy is to start with conservatives and to move into the rest of the political spectrum. And I think that now this period in opposition is the time to remember those lessons. That's the historic path to it. Are we going to do it the same way Harper did it in 2006? No, because times have changed. We're going to have to take a fresh look at some of those things, and I think we've got 4 years to do that. But the idea that we somehow try to parachute ourselves into the center of the political spectrum and establish a conservative base from the center, we know that that doesn't end in very good success.
All right, interesting times ahead. Ian Brodie, man at the center of the early years of the Harper government, thanks so much.
Pleasure to talk to you, Brian.